Story 1. Set up. I'm from a country where COVID vaccinations are still hard to come by, especially for people under the age of 45. There are non-governmental organizations helping people get vaccinated if the people are willing to pay the subsidized rate of vaccination. This rate is public information, so cannot be tweaked much. Cast. Me, entitled person 1, a lady who kept shouting, her husband, nice staff at the organization. A third slightly entitled person who was wronged by the entitled parents. Now to the story. This happened to me 2 days ago at a non-governmental organization-run COVID vaccination center. There, instead of giving people token numbers, the staff had asked people to sit on chairs kept 6 feet apart and move along the chair rows. The people sitting in the front are called for vaccination. Further, they were letting people with young kids, new mothers, people above 70, and people with disabilities cut the line. Understandable. This method worked well and good as long as staff was supervising the movement. As soon as they left, people started cutting each other, pushing people to get ahead, and even pull chairs from under people. It was chaotic. While all this was happening, the entitled lady grabbed the chair from under me and tried to take it next to her husband's chair. I told her that the staff had requested that we don't move the chairs as it would violate the social distancing norms. She blew up on me, saying that I'm one of the rich entitled people who think speaking sweetly will get them whatever we want in life. If I wanted the vaccine, I shouldn't have been a fatty who couldn't run fast enough to take a front seat. To which I repeated myself and said that this wasn't a game of musical chairs and we had to follow a system. At this time, I don't know how, the nice staff came by and said that I should let the lady have the chair as she's elder to me. So I did that. Then she asked me to follow her and gave me a seat almost up front. This made the entitled lady and her husband very angry, and they started fighting with the staff and quit it only after being threatened to be thrown out. When the next round of people were called in, and all of us had to move 1 row ahead again, the entitled lady stole another person's chair, and the whole fight ensued again. Before the staff could interject again, that person started pulling at people's chairs, saying that she deserved it and was waiting for hours. This is understandable, but she then called a wheelchair person useless and a wastage vaccination. Hence, she's an entitled person as well. Soon, that entitled person started almost crying, so I offered my seat to her. Seeing this, a nice kid offered his seat to me and said he can go back a bit and sit with his girlfriend. At this point, the staff spoke up and said that was enough, and if people couldn't act like grown-ups, they didn't deserve the vaccine. Then she just asked me and the nice kid to cut the line and go ahead to get vaccinated. The entitled person #3 kind of lunged up and tried to pull my braid. Then she shouted that she deserved to cut the line because she's been there for 2 hours and I was there for only 1. Again true. I was ahead of her only because the staff let me cut the line twice. I feel a bit guilty about it. Anyways, as I was leaving after my vaccination, I saw that the entitled husband was being escorted out by the security. I asked a security person what happened. I know I'm nosy, and they told me that he threatened to punch the staff because she let others go ahead of him. Story 2. So I just feel like writing down my frustration, and after lurking for a while, I guess this is where this story fits. Growing up, my grandparents started bank accounts for all of their grandchildren in order to save enough for college. My parents nonetheless were always too irresponsible financially, and still are, and as the people responsible for those accounts, each month, my grandparents deposited into these savings my parents would spend them on living expenses. During all of our lives, going to college was never even an option. It was mandatory for both my grandparents and my parents. Therefore, such expenses became mostly irrational. Once we were of the correct age to go to college, these accounts were at 0. Thus, my parents set us to get student loans. My grandparents died shortly after my brother started college, and by the time I was set to attend, debt was intensifying. Nonetheless, at 18 I was waiting for my turn at the bank in order to request student loans that I could have avoided if they had been responsible with money that didn't belong to them. Don't get me wrong, we had a lavish lifestyle, more like my mother did. In our case, we mostly got the essential expenses, essential clothes, one pair of winter boots, one pair of summer sneakers, and one pair of event shoes. Outside, though, anyone would think we were living comfortably, but at 18, I was now indebted in my own name to pay for both my bachelor's degree and an extra for a master's degree, also mandatory, but that I genuinely thought I hadn't even asked for. Today, I came to find out that the amount I had loaned that wasn't even enough to cover my bachelor's had been spent by them. I thought I'd be getting the amount in monthly installments, but apparently I had gotten a lump sum immediately. They spent it again on living expenses and each year struggled to pay for my education. Now I'm set to apply for my dream school, the one I've been working towards since I was 19, which is extremely elitist. I'm set to apply for a scholarship, but would still need to put forward 10% of the tuition, all included, which has gotten me to question my parents in regards to extending my loans for that period of time. I've just been told that I need to get that amount myself because they're both unable to pay it, as well as not being acceptable creditors for these extensions. I may have to give up on my dream due to their inability to live within their means. Edit, because many are asking. I come from an European country that is particularly corrupt, while at the same time having very high taxes and with a cost for public education that is the epitome of dumbness. While growing up, I never had access to this account. Neither was I aware of its goal until very late in life. When I required the loans, my parents co-signed them, making them responsible in case of non-payment. Back when I turned 18, I was very sheltered, had no means to be independent, and was never granted access to the account. But truth is, I didn't think I'd need it. For me, it was simple. I get the money, I pay my bachelor's tuition yearly, and that's it. Instead, my parents were making use of this money in order to subsist, while pushing the payment of my tuition until very late in the year, when for some reason, they would be able to afford to pay that school year. I never got access to the loan. From my understanding, it was something I would get monthly into that account, and sometimes I would ask my parents to give me €10 just to pay for phone communications. One day, my mom replied there was no more money, but from my understanding, that meant that for that month there was no more money, and they proceeded to have to afford my communications and tuition, when it could have been avoided had they left the loans alone. Years later, I'm now 23, I've been guilted into how the alternative path I chose in my education has cost them. This path is the only way I could achieve the career I'm aiming for while keeping many doors open. We've argued the cost of my master's because once again, they depleted the account that could have afforded this master's. I've had to work small jobs to pay for a post-graduation and still don't have enough to cover everything. At the present, I'm finally fit to apply to the last college I require to achieve that specific dream career. But that has been pushed away because they can't afford the 10% required, which is part of what they spent from my loans. Story 3. So I live in a relatively small city of 20,000 people in Sweden. I'm in year 11 and am a pretty average student. Before this incident, I'd been to the principal's office once for a matter, not really in my hands. I was more of a witness then. I have some friends around school, but isn't the most social or well-known person. This story started around a year ago. Me and my friend, who we will now call John, were sort of low on money. We didn't really have anything to buy, but money is great, am I right? Our old principal was an amazing person. He always had answers for people's problems and made sure that their problems were also his. He took a lot of time in the day to talk to students and make them feel motivated. This is not a big school, so he didn't have that much to do. Anyway, me and John planned to start a business from our lockers. These lockers were not so big, so we had to use 2 lockers to fit all of the supplies, we thought. My school allowed gum to be chewed anywhere as long as it didn't bother others, so we settled on selling gum and water, which also people wanted to buy after they stopped supplying mugs. We had a rocky start to the business. My first friend started advertising our business, but to no success. We probably had 10 customers the first week, but it didn't even cover 1/10 of our expenses. Didn't stop us. After a month, we had made $10 or so in profit, and we were happy. This number rose some in the future. After 3 months, everyone knew of our business, and even the teachers had bought from us. Our business tactic mainly revolved around getting our supplies from bulk buying from a website that sells products close to expiration date. We also sold for a low price to have our products cheaper than the school cafeteria. The principal talks to us about the business, but since it doesn't affect our grades, he was completely fine with it. He even recommended that we continue. All is well. Fast forward to 3 months ago. The principal had just retired and we had gotten a new principal. He was useless at his job. He didn't fulfill any of the things he promised to bring us. He was verbally mean to students and teachers. He acted as though he was greater than all others and made it everyone's job to remember. He once said, "You are not worthy of being an English teacher," to a teacher from Bristol with a degree from both English and Swedish college. He once went out of his authority to change the rules without board approval just to be right in an argument with me. It was about a hat in the school cafeteria. He also had small tantrums in his office at meetings when his ideas were democratically shut down. This prompted the board to change their mind about his outright bad ideas. And as the icing on the cake, he found out about our lovely, principal-approved business. He shut it down instantly by putting locks on our lockers without notice. These lockers had personal things in them, not to mention hundreds of dollars in supplies and payments, and it probably took 3-4 days to get him to open them. Me and John had about enough. We tried speaking with him about it, but he threatened to terminate John and our other friend, who at this point had bought into the business, which for us was a big thing. Also, he later did that. The full school board only meets every 2 months. Enough time to read into the school bylaws and to both find loopholes and arguments. We wanted our business back. I had found out that the only time we could strike was when the board was all together, so I made sure we were ready at that point. Time goes by, and I found out that I have proof of both him changing the rules earlier when he was in an argument with me and other times when he did it. But I also knew that it was grounds for questioning the principal's position. This wasn't my intent from the beginning, but at this point I was so fed up I took whatever I got. Also, for anyone thinking I read a bunch of books to get this information or something. No, I simply went on the school's website and searched for bylaws. This is a private school, so they must be available to everyone. Okay, game day. Me and the others were ready to get our business back, and if we could kick him off of his position. The board started pretty slow. They talked about coming changes that probably wouldn't happen and other boring things. When it came time to ask questions and suggestions, we were quick to start talking. Our new partner in business throws his hand up. "I'd like to question the new principal position on the basis of verbal abuse." He at this point shot with his little 9mm. He waited to use the big cannon for dramatic effect. "What? What do you mean? Against who and when?" The principal was both fuming and simply choked to the bone. "When you locked our lockers, you said some mean things, and we had personal things in those." I quickly understood my friend's idea. He was going to wait to drop the big bomb, and during the waiting time, he mentioned every little bad thing he had done. "You had an illegal trading business. It's against school." It's not. I checked the bylaws, and it's allowed for students to supply their fellow students with school supplies. I know I bent the rules a little, but I just argue that gum can be crucial for some people's mind to keep calm. My friend was now eager to drop the last bomb, the nuclear bomb, and to follow up on what he said. Changing the rules without board approval is grounds for firing, and here is the evidence. I hand over the evidence, which is basically a printed copy of the bylaws and recent changes file in the newsletter, where I've circled the changes in question. I point out that these recent changes didn't happen at the same time as the board had meetings, when rules usually changed or got instituted. After the confrontation, everyone got instructed to leave. We later got told by the English teacher that the principal had been instructed to leave or else charges would have been pressed. He had apparently used some money meant for the school to buy a new car for himself, so he was also fined for that. But that's about everything that happened. We lost a man his job because he shut down our, probably illegal, business. We started the business again, and everything went back to normal. Story 4. This happened about a year ago during winter on a weekend morning. I was waiting for my haircut appointment and decided to pop into a popular coffee shop next door. The place was busy, but not completely packed. There were 2 people ahead of me in line and a few more behind me. The person in front of me stood out immediately. She wore an expensive coat, flashy jewelry, and had the unmistakable, "I need to speak with the manager" aura. Her order was long and detailed, something like a latte with 2 pumps of this, a little of that, this type of milk, 1 pump of something else, and so on. It took a while for her to finish. The barista informed her it might take a few minutes, and she moved to the side to wait with the other 2 or 3 people. When asked for her name, she replied, "Karen." When it was my turn, I kept it simple. I don't need anything fancy, just a straightforward coffee makes me happy. My order could be summed up in 1 word: large. Occasionally, I add, large and black, for clarity. Surprisingly, the barista repeated my order and somehow managed to turn it into an elaborate description. A large American coffee with no cream, no sugar, no extras, etc. I clarified, just a simple large coffee. He nodded, turned around, filled up a cup in 2 steps, and handed it to me. I paid, thanked him, and all was good. As I started to leave, coffee in hand, I noticed Karen staring at me with a shocked expression, like I had just committed some grave offense. She took a couple of steps toward the counter and launched into a tirade. She demanded to speak to a manager, and I paused to watch the drama unfold. The argument began with her yelling, "Why is my latte taking so long, and why did that guy, pointing at me, get his coffee first? What happened to first come, first serve?" The barista tried to explain the difference between our orders, mine being simple and hers. Well, not, but she wasn't having it. Her voice grew louder, peppered with mild profanity and complaints, creating a scene for everyone to witness. At this point, a man who had been standing quietly in the back of the line unzipped his coat, revealing a police uniform. He stepped forward, calmly making his presence known. Now, the manager was also behind the counter, trying to mediate the situation alongside the officer. The police officer attempted to defuse the situation. He explained that her behavior was unreasonable, that she was causing a public disturbance, and urged her to calm down. Karen, however, was not interested in calming down. She looked stunned for a moment, realizing the officer wasn't siding with her. Then, she doubled down. "What is wrong with you? I'm the victim here. I paid good money, and I wasn't served. They should be arrested." Her anger reignited as she jabbed her finger at the officer's chest. "You need to do your job," she said, punctuating her words with sharp pokes. Before she could finish her rant, the officer grabbed her arm and performed a takedown maneuver. Karen hit the floor face first, screaming as the officer calmly began reciting her rights. "You are under arrest for assaulting a police officer, disorderly conduct, and causing a public disturbance." Another officer entered the shop, alerted by the commotion, and assisted in the situation. As Karen continued to protest, they escorted her out of the coffee shop. I approached the officers and asked if they needed me to make a statement. They assured me they had all the information they needed, so I left the shop, shaking my head at the unexpected morning drama. Story 5. This is my first time posting on Reddit. I've read stories here before, but never made an account or posted anything. I was reminiscing with a few friends, and I suddenly remembered this. I told them about it, and they recommended that I post it on here, as the community would love my story. It's a bit of a long read, but I assure you it's worth it. I'm a 39-year-old Caucasian male, and this occurred when I just graduated from college. So when I was about 22. At the time, I was about 6'2" and a decent build. I always was one of the popular kids at school and was never having problems with any sort of bullying. It all started after I graduated. Very, very suddenly. First, it was all my college friends disconnecting with me. First ignoring me a little here and there to full out avoiding me. Then came the harassment. I'd started a job at a local convenience store which wasn't very busy, so it was a perfect place to come and harass me. When I say they, I'm referring to a group of guys, all about 1-2 years younger than me and still in college. They were way more muscular than I was, and some even cleared 6'4", so you can imagine them being pretty intimidating to me. At the start, they came in and did minor things that at most just inconvenienced me, such as taking something, bringing it to the counter, then telling me they'd changed their minds and didn't want to buy it, then coming back with something else and doing the exact thing over and over again until my manager came and kicked them out of the store. Then, it became more serious. They started waiting for me outside in the parking lot after my shift ended and started getting physical with me. I tried my best to ignore them, but it was incredibly annoying. It wasn't extreme, just like a punch on the shoulder, a flick on my ear, the usual bully stuff. This continued for weeks, and I was afraid to take any action as I was afraid that it would just get worse. I was very non-confrontational at the time. Eventually, they decided they'd gotten bored of messing with me and decided to take it to the next level by physically harming me. They'd shove me to the ground and kick me, smash me against my car and mess with my stuff. Once they nearly even broke my arm. I was done with these guys, but still too fearful of them to take action. So I let it continue. Big mistake. Apparently, I wasn't enough for them, so they started targeting my family. I don't know how, but they got my brother and mother's phone number and started calling and harassing them, using one of those apps which allows you to have a random, anonymous phone number and being all around jerks. This infuriated me a lot, but I kept my cool thinking that they would just get bored of me and move on. They didn't. My brother, who was at the same college I graduated from, was about 4 years younger than me, so about 18 at the time. He was exactly like me, non-confrontational and shy, which made these jerks think that they could have a piss at him to get to me. One day, my mother got a phone call, telling her that my brother was in the ER as he had a broken collarbone, broken arm, and a fractured hip. They told her that he had told them that he slipped and fell down the stairs. I knew from the start that this was nonsense. He wasn't allowed to walk for a full month as doctors said it could cause the fracture to extend and worsen the situation. So here my brother was, stuck in a wheelchair for about a month because he slipped and fell down the stairs. I went and confronted him about this, and after I applied some pressure, he broke. He started crying uncontrollably and told me it was the same dudes who had been harassing me for the past month. Furthermore, my mother went into mild depression because of the whole ordeal. Everyone has their limits, and they have just crossed mine. This is the point where hell unleashes. I, through some friends, got the number of one of the dude's girlfriends, who by the way was completely oblivious to the fact that her boyfriend was a sadistic bully, and after explaining the situation to her, got her in on my plan. I got her to give me his address, as this was crucial to my revenge. My family members were devastated at the news of my brother, and after explaining the whole ordeal to my 2 older cousins who were both Taekwondo black belts, they were also in on my plan. I was going to annihilate him, physically and emotionally. 2 days before the college finals week, I went to his house and rang the doorbell. He saw me and instantly started grinning. I told him I wanted to fight, and he started laughing hard. He told me I should go home and try not to embarrass myself, but I was persistent. He followed me outside, and we went to a nearby abandoned school, which was about a minute away from his house. The whole time he was taunting me about how I was going to suffer and how great he was. We reached the field and my 2 cousins came out in their Taekwondo gear looking intimidating as hell. His attitude and facial expression completely changed. He started complaining about how it wasn't fair and that it was 3 against 1. I told him that the fact that he had assaulted my brother and caused him to not be able to walk was not fair and told him that he was going to regret that decision. Before he could respond, one of my cousins came running up from behind him and did some sort of move, kicking him brutally in the head. He fell to the ground and his head started bleeding. I could hear him whimpering on the ground, but I was merciless. I signaled to my other cousin to have at him, and he did. It was beautiful. Every kick to the stomach, every punch to the head. His bleeding body lying in the ground. Watching him suffer after what he put me and my family through. Eventually, We stopped attacking him after we realized he was unconscious and started to get a little worried. I called his girlfriend, and she called, and she came and put him in her car with the help of my cousins and took him to the hospital. I don't know all the details of his injuries, but he was hospitalized for a month and a half. He ended up missing finals week, having his girlfriend break up with him, and having his entire family condemn his actions after I informed them of what he had done. He was also left with a permanently disfigured face. He had to have plastic surgery for all his facial injuries, and the surgery botched the job, and now his face is permanently disfigured. I didn't get away with it completely, though. His family pressed charges, and I was arrested for assault and was jailed for 6 months with some pretty hefty fines, but it was worth it. The other bullies stayed away from me and my brother ever since then, and we have gotten on with our lives. I feel like the satisfaction of vengeance was worth the 6 months in jail. Edit. At the start I say I have one brother, and when we attack the guy at the field, I refer to my male cousin as my brother. I fixed the error in the story, but this is just to inform that when I said my other brother, I meant my cousin. Story 6. This was when I was around 16 years old. In this story, we have entitled nephew, entitled big sister, little sister, my mom and me. 9 years ago, when I was 11, my dad went missing. He used to visit every Saturday and just stopped. It wasn't until a few weeks when an officer came to our door and told us my dad was found dead in his apartment, after having an epileptic seizure. Why is this important, I hear you ask? Because I only ever had one photo of just him and me, and it's a photo I had always cherished. I had gotten my mom to take the photo of us with a DSi XL I had gotten for my 10th birthday, and she did. I didn't have an SD card at the time, and the photo was just in the system storage. The photo meant a lot to me, and I was always careful with my DS after that. Well, I was careful up until I was 16. My entitled big sister dropped off my entitled nephew at my mom's house while she was at work. Unbeknownst to me, he wasn't allowed to use his tablet because he'd been naughty at home and was being punished. Of course, my mom didn't tell me any of this. The kid came upstairs to play with my little sister, and I closed my door and started to play on my PlayStation. About 10 minutes pass, and I get a knock at my door. Entitled nephew, Uncle Peppa, can I play with your DS because I'm bored and want to play Mario with your little sister? Me, all right. I took out my Pokemon cartridge and put on my new Super Mario Bros. If you remember Luigi Poker, then it's that game, and handed my DS to my nephew. It wasn't uncommon for him to ask, and I was used to handing it to him. Over the next hour and a half, I hear my little sister and entitled nephew laughing and joking, having a grand old time, when all of a sudden, I heard the entitled nephew yell and heard a loud crack. I didn't think anything of it because my nephew had a habit of sitting in my sister's wardrobe, which had a broken leg and would make a crack whenever he sat in it. An hour passes where I hear my door open, and it's my little sister. Peppa, I have something to tell you, and please don't be mad. Sure, what's up? Well, the entitled nephew kept losing in the Mario game, and out of anger, he threw your DS. I assume she meant threw it on the floor. He's thrown it before, it probably will be fine. Did it hit the carpet or the cushions or what? That's the thing, he threw it at the wall. He did what? I asked her to bring me my DS, and she hurried into her room and brought it to me. It didn't look too bad until I opened it. The top screen was cracked, and none of the buttons worked, including the power button, making it so I couldn't even turn it off. I got very upset and went straight downstairs to my mom and told her what happened. She got mad because he wasn't even supposed to be on it and said she'll see if she can get it fixed. Unfortunately, she couldn't get it fixed, and she knew I was heartbroken, as I couldn't get back that photo of my dad and me. My entitled big sister came to pick up her kid and saw me crying, holding my broken DS, desperately trying to access the photo to no avail. What happened to Peppa? Mum, he lent your kid his DS to play Mario, and then he threw it at the wall. My sister was apologetic and bought me a 3 Disc scones to compensate, to which I told her it's not about the DS. I had photos of family members that had passed all on there. I had some of my granddad and my past pets, but most importantly, this lost me the one photo of my dad I held the most dear, and that no amount of money or new DSs could make up for the lost memories. She was very apologetic. But our story is not over yet. The second part of this story is from when I was 17, so about 1 year after my entitled nephew broke my DS. I had a new 3 Deciscons, and my mom and I played games from time to time. My big sister dropped off her kid again while she went to work, and he saw me playing my 3DS with my mom. The kid, Uncle Peppa, "Can I play your 3 Deciscons with your little sister, please?" Me, "No. But that's not fair. You always get to play it, and I never do. You're selfish. I always get to play it because it's my 3 Deciscons, and I'm not going to let you touch it after what you did to my last one." My mum agreed with me, and my entitled nephew cried for a bit until my mum gave him her phone to shut him up. No less than 30 minutes later, my sister comes in and shouts, "Where is my son?" My mum was confused and asked her why, to which my sister screams at her that she has no right to call her kid a menace and a terror, and she demanded that I give him the 3 Deciscons that she paid for, because she did me a favor buying me a new one after her kid broke my original one. My entitled nephew walks in with a big grin on his face and throws my mum's phone at her, where it becomes apparent that the kid had rang my sister and cried that we were being horrible to him. I start to tell her that I won't let him play with my 3 Deciscons because the last time I did, he broke it, and I lost the last photo of my dad that I had ever taken. My sister slaps me round the face and says I have no right to tell her son no, especially because I bully him. I get upset and scream back at her that I didn't say anything to her little child, except that I didn't want him to play with my DS because he broke my last one. She said, "Oh, stop being a baby, it was over a year ago, and your dad died 6 years ago. He wasn't even a good dad. He was a binge-drinking jerk and deserved to die. Just get a grip." At that point, my mum lost it and was herself crying. She said that my big sister had no right to hit me, and that was a despicable thing to say about my dad, and that she doesn't know how hurt I am because she still has her dad. My older siblings have different parents to me and my little sister. My mom then kicked out my sister and her entitled kid. "Entitled sister, but you have to look after my kid. I need to go to work." Mum, you should have thought about that before smacking my son around the face and then insulting his father. It's only a photo. Honestly, I was telling my friend how much of a crybaby Peppa is, who cries over losing a photo. And with that, you're going to have to find someone else to look after your kid. She kicked my sister out of the house and burst into tears. It was then she let me know why I could only see my dad on weekends. She loved him, but he was a binge drinker, and the binge drinking set off his epilepsy, and she didn't want me and my little sister from seeing him having a seizure while smelling of alcohol, but wanted him to be in our life, but couldn't deal with the binge drinking side of him. She also told me how she always felt bad about her decision to not let him stay with us, because he was such a good dad, and felt that if she had let him stay with us, he wouldn't be dead. My entitled sister continued to ring and try to drop her kid off at Mum's house, but she always refused and was called a selfish witch. My entitled sister went as far as telling her friends that my mum abused me and my little sister. Obviously, social services got involved and it upset my mum. Eventually, she rang my sister's dad and also contacted my 2 older brothers to talk some sense into her. According to my older brother, she kept blaming my mum for being a bad grandmother, and that's why her kid was the way he was. Things cooled down eventually, and my sister apologized. None of the family talk about it, but whenever my big sister sees me playing my 3 Deciscons, she immediately grabs her kid and leaves.